Installing the primary site. Installing the primary site server itself is not all that difficult. Now I've already gone ahead and dropped the CD in the drive, and as with most Microsoft products, you'll be presented with this familiar splash screen. Now from here we can launch the setup of SMS 2003, launch the Recovery Expert, and we'll talk about that also during this course. We can browse the release notes and of course exit from this wizard. Okay, well, no prizes for guessing which one I'm going to choose, so I'll click on SMS 2003 to start the installation wizard. Alright, well, we'll click Next, and because this is a new primary site server, we don't have any other SMS servers on our network. The wizard has detected this and just tells us about what it knows, so again, we'll click Next. Okay, so what do we want to do? We can install a primary server, a secondary server if we already have a primary SMS server, or we can just install the admin consoles and tools, which we can use to manage our existing SMS servers. Now you'll notice that these other options here are all grayed out, and that's because Setup did not detect any other SMS installations. But if we had an existing SMS server, we could choose to upgrade it from an earlier version, we could uninstall it, or modify any existing servers. Well, as this is our first server, we'll leave the default at primary and click Next. Now we get a choice of running either an Express install or a custom install. When you choose Express, the guesswork is taken out of the component installation for you. It will install most of the SMS 2003 components. It will enable all of the client agents with the exception of software inventory and software metering. It will enable all of the discovery methods, excluding the network discovery, and of course, it will install all of the required service accounts as well. Now when we choose the custom installation, SMS doesn't automatically enable any of the discovery methods with the exception of the SMS heartbeat, and it won't enable the client agents. But as the custom method is the method of installation recommended for production networks, that'll be the option I'll choose, so I'll leave the default here at custom and click Next. Now we'll need to read and agree with the license terms and choose Next. But the next screen is where you'll need to enter in your company name and your license key, so I'm just going to pause this video now, enter in my license key, and then we'll click Next. Okay, I've just entered in my license key, and now we'll need to specify some site-specific information for our new SMS site. So here we'll need to enter in a 3-digit code that will be used by SMS to identify a site. Now this code has to be unique and should not be used by any other SMS site in your network. If you do use the same site code in another area of your network, you'll likely run into problems with WINs overriding entries from the other site, and this can cause all sorts of problems such as clients using a wrong management point and so on. So make sure whatever you enter here must be a unique value. So I'm just going to call my site W01, and we'll move on where we need to enter in a site name. Now this site name should be a descriptive name which can be anywhere up to 50 characters in length, including any spaces, so make sure that you choose something that easily identifies the site that you're creating. So I'm going to change my site name here from simply Winstructor to Winstructor Head Office Primary, which makes it easy to identify that this server is a primary server at the head office of Winstructor. Now the final part to enter is the domain in which this server belongs to, and that's already been populated for us, so I'll simply click Next. Okay, if this is a new installation and you don't have any other SMS 2003 servers in your forest, you have the option of extending the Active Directory schema. So to extend the schema, you will need to be logged in using an account that is a member of the Schema Admins group. Now I'm currently logged in using the administrator account, so that's fine. I could simply check this box. Now incidentally, if you do decide to do this later, you can run a utility called Extend AD Schema, and you'll find this on your SMS 2003 CD. So we'll go and open up my computer, and I'll just explore my CD-ROM here, and we'll navigate to our SMS setup directory, followed by the bin directory, and finally the i386 directory. And if we scroll down a bit, you'll find our command here, Extend AD Schema. So simply run this at a command prompt using the appropriate account, which is a member of the Schema Admins group, and it'll extend the schema for you. In fact, running this utility is as simple as double-clicking on the icon, and once the schema extension has been performed, you'll find on the root of your C drive there will be a log file written that contains the output of this command. So I'm just going to run this file here. Now as you can see, it was pretty quick, so if we go and open up my computer again and we'll navigate to our C drive, down here we can see a file extend AD schema.log. And if we open this up, hopefully we'll be seeing a whole bunch of attributes that have been defined and added to our Active Directory. Now, whether you choose to extend the schema using our command utility or using the wizard, I'd advise quickly checking this log just to make sure that there were no errors. Now, if per chance you do have errors, say for example you've logged on using an account that didn't have the right permissions to extend the schema, you'll find this log useful. But remember to delete the log before attempting the schema extension again. That way, you'll have a brand new log waiting for you on your second attempt, and you won't confuse the details of the old failed attempt with the output of the new one. Now, another point I would like to make here, if you are rolling out SMS for the first time and you have a great number of domain controllers in your forest, the schema extension can take a while. So it's not a bad idea to extend the schema today using the command utility and come back tomorrow and perform the rest of the installation after the updates have been replicated to the other servers in your network. Now, as I only have the one single domain controller here, it's fine for me and didn't take too long, as we saw when I executed it a moment ago, so I'm just going to leave this box and choose Next. Okay, do we want Advanced Security or Standard Security? If we leave the default at Advanced Security, the SMS services will run under the local system account. And if that's not to your liking, you could specify a user account that you'd like the services to run under. So to choose your own, simply select Standard Security and then enter in the account name and password, and SMS will take care of creating the user account for you and assigning the appropriate group memberships and rights. Now, if you already have an account that you'd like to use, you could also specify it here, but you'll need to assign the permissions manually. And in case you're wondering, this account will need to be a member of the local admin group on this server, the domain admins group, and it will need to be granted the logon as a service right. Now, I'll leave the default here at Advanced Security and click Next. Now, here we can specify how many clients this SMS site will manage. Now, make sure when you enter in a value here that this number is accurate. Now, you should have already determined this number from either your license requirements or the planning you performed before starting your installation. Now, if it's not correct, you might find that you have issues, as depending on what you specify here will affect the size of the database that SMS will create for you. Now, for me in my lab, I'm happy with 100, so I'll just click Next. Okay, we're getting there. Now we need to choose what components we want to install. The first two options here are required, so we don't really have any choice there. They're the SMS server itself and the admin console. But we do get the option to install the remote tools, which will allow us to remote control other computers over the network. Now, if you've ever used terminal services, a remote desktop or PC anywhere, well, you get the idea. So we'll select our remote tools as well, so we can see that later on. Now, the default installation will go to CSMS, and you can certainly change that if you wish, but I'm just going to leave that default path and click Next. Okay, now we need to tell the wizard where our SQL server is. Now, since I've already installed SQL on this server, the server name has already been populated for me. Now, if your SQL server happens to be on a different box and in a production network, that's probably a good idea, then just enter in the name of that server here. Now, we can also choose if we want to use Windows authentication or use SQL authentication. Now, I'll just be using the SA account for SQL in this installation, so I'm going to choose No. Now, do take note of the text on this screen here, as it might affect you depending on the type of security you chose a few screens back. SMS will automatically create the SQL database for you, but only if the SQL database is on this server. If it's on a different server, then you'll need to create it manually. Now, if you're using a remote SQL server and you chose to install with standard security, then you'll need to make the user account you selected a member of the administrators group for the SQL server. And finally, if you're using a remote SQL server and you choose to install with the advanced security option, then you'll need to make the computer account for this SMS server a member of the administrators group for the SQL server. Now, with that all in mind, we'll click Next, and we'll need to enter in the password for our SA account for our SQL server. So I'll just enter in my password here and I'll confirm it again, and we'll click Next. Now, the default behavior for SMS is to create the SQL database for us because SQL is on this server, so I'll leave the default option here selected. Now, if you are installing on a remote server, click No, and you'll have to do this manually. So I'll leave it at Yes, and we'll click Next. And now I need to supply a name for the database. Now, I'm just going to accept the default here, but take note of this down here at the bottom, because I selected earlier in the wizard that I'll be supporting 100 clients, SMS will automatically size the database to a minimum of 50 megabytes with a 20 meg transaction log. So again, make sure you size the number of clients correctly. Now if it all looks good, click Next, and you'll need to enter in the location where you want the database and transaction log to be stored. Now I'm just going to leave the default here of SMS data on my C drive, but for best performance in a production environment, I'd suggest moving this to a separate fault-tolerant drive. So we'll click Next, and we'll need to specify an estimated maximum number of administrator consoles we expect to have running at one time, as well as an estimated number of concurrent connections to our SQL Server database. Now you can change these values if you need, but notice this checkbox below. If this box is checked, then SMS will dynamically alter these values to what it thinks is best for your configuration. Now if you do decide to uncheck this box, make sure you do enter in values that are sufficient for your needs, or you might have problems with the SMS site server being unable to access the SQL database. Now I'll just leave these defaults here and we'll click Next. Okay, finally we're here. We now get a summary screen telling us of all the settings that we've decided on, so make sure you review this list and check to see that everything is correct. If it is, click Finish to start the evaluation of your server. Now if the evaluation is all healthy, then the installation of SMS 2003 will begin. Now this can take a while, so what I'll do is I'll pause the video here and we'll return once the installation is complete. Okay, the installation is complete, so we'll click OK. Congratulations, we've just successfully installed our first primary site server. In the coming videos, we'll talk more about configuring SMS to manage your systems.